So after the Louvre was no longer the palace, the French king decided they needed an expanded location, and so he moved out of the city into Versailles. And this is outside of France. It takes about 30 minutes to get there, and just by bus. There's no metro line that leads all the way out to Versailles. Um, Originally, this was already a location for kings, but it was a hunting lodge, kind of a getaway. And Louis XIV, like I said, decided that the kings needed a larger place to live, and so he expanded it and it became the King's Palace. There were only three kings that lived there, so Louis XIV is the one who moved to Versailles. And then Louis XV, that Sun King that we talked about, that decorated everything in gold. And then Louis XVI, who paid for all of their mistakes. Um, so Louis XVI lived here until he was driven out during the Revolution. Each of the kings made improvements to the chateau, to the castle. So this middle section was originally here, and then Louis XIV added the wings out to the side. Louis XV then added this side, and then Louis XVI added this side. So basically, it's three complete castles that are attached by long hallways. During the 17th and 18th century, Louis Philippe, who was a governor in the state or in the country of France, and he put Versailles under an entire renovation at the end of the 17th, beginning of the 18th centuries. And he removed many of the apartments that were built in Versailles and created giant exhibition halls. So now the palace is divided into two sections. So this side is a National Historical Museum. Actually, it might be this side. That's the historical museum. And it shows kind of what the palace was in its heyday and how it functioned. And then the other side is actually government offices. So can you imagine going to work every day in something that looks like this? Um, if you see it, you can see the paintings on the ceilings, which mimic what we saw in the Louvre. Everything's covered in gold or gold leaf, and uh, there are, unlike the Louvre, where some of the ceilings are painted. In Versailles, every single ceiling that you walk through is painted. There's a ton of crystal and lots of mirrors. This is actually the Hall of Mirrors. Here's another picture of it. You can see how much gold is covered. It makes it almost look fake, right? Um, this Hall of Mirrors, one side is made up of mirrors, and you can see the candelabras there. And then the other side is made up of windows, and the windows overlook the gardens in the restored part of the palace. The gardens are a must see. So once you tour the chateau, the castle, then you have to go outside. Hopefully, you're there on a nice day. They are incredibly well manicured. There are over 100 gardeners that are employed just on this garden. Um, they are, I think, some of the most beautiful gardens in all of France. The whole estate of Versailles is over 37,000 acres. So some of you were talking the other day about how many acres you live on. Um, I don't think any of us live on 37,000 acres. Versailles is basically an entire town built around the castle. When I click over to the map, you'll see that there's a town and the castle right next to the castle. Pretty much everyone that lived in that town or lives in that town works at Versailles, and operates in service to this palace. This is Marie Antoinette's apartment, her bedroom chamber, and this is how it actually looks now. These railings would not have been here when she was there, but pretty much everything else is how she would have seen it. So here is a picture of her husband, and then a bust of her. If you go to Biltmore, um, you'll see similarities of this style. But you can see why the peasants were pretty angry because this is how the king and queen are living when the peasants can't feed their own children. Um, so there are uh, lots of different things about Marie Antoinette that are pretty interesting, but one of which is, I think I told you, she has a room about this size that would have held all her shoes. So living in a life of luxury. Also important to note that she and the king would have had two separate bedrooms, and then there was a common room in between the two, like kind of a tea sitting room. But they would not have been in the same bedroom unless he called her into his bedroom. So here's the map of Versailles. You can see here's the palace and the city all in this area, and then Paris is up here, Paris proper. So Versailles is actually in distance almost as big as Paris. So I'm gonna take you in to the palace. Let's check it out. So here's some of the interior as soon as it loads. Um, Hello, people. So you can see all these frescoes up in the top, and just how incredibly decorated it is. And again, I really encourage you just to get on Google Maps and take a look around because it's pretty phenomenal. So you can look all the way down the Hall of Mirrors, kind of where they are here. Here's another little bit less decorated entryway. Still pretty ornate. This is a shot of one of the gardens, or part of the gardens, out in Versailles. And you can see how they've cut away and added sculpture into a cave, and kind of created a natural looking piece. And here's an example of some of the gardens that are available to check out. I've actually seen them manicure these gardens, and they will physically take a tape measure out and measure each flower to a certain height so that all the flowers match. This is a nice overview of the gardens. You can see there's lots of paths to walk. It's often this busy. There are some well-manicured trees all the way through. And here's an aerial view. You can see here's the palace, and then several of the places that it takes to upkeep the palace, and then all of this is maintained forest around the palace. Versailles is a lot greener than Paris. Okay, and now we're out at the courtyard. Say hello to this lovely couple here that probably took this photo. But you can see where the women would have marched and beat on the entrance gate, asking for bread. So this, like I said, the palace was just lived in by three kings. Short-lived, didn't undergo a whole lot of use throughout the ages. Like I said, a hunting lodge originally, and then moved to the palace just for three kings.